everyone for joining us today. Our webinar is on PPM reports for portfolio, program and projects. And today we have Dan Stouffer and Hamad speaking with us. We really appreciate the time that you've taken to join us, so thank you. Again, and as always, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share and comment as we go throughout the webinar, because we really love your interaction and your thoughts and your comments. So first up, we have Dan. So Dan, thank you for your time today, and thank you for taking us through this webinar.
Sure.
Over to you.
All right. So today in our webinar, we're going to go through some of the technologies that are used to deliver reports to PPM environments. It's stating the obvious, I guess, that most organizations deploy a PPM solution to provide visibility and reporting across their portfolios of projects to give them the intelligence they need to make better business decisions. Project Server, the Microsoft PPM solution, provides a powerful combination of technologies which are bundled together in the business intelligence and reporting platform. And essentially, they're built on the SQL and SharePoint technologies that lay underneath the Project Server or PPM solution. Today, as the screen on the shared screen currently shows, we're going to focus on Project Server views, and we'll be doing that very quickly because that's probably the aspect of the tool that most of the attendees are very familiar with. We're going to look at SSRS, SQL Server Reporting Services. Again, that's a very commonly used technology, and I would expect many of the attendees are familiar with that as well. Then Excel services, perhaps less of our attendees are familiar with that, so we'll spend some time there. And then into the probably more exciting technologies of Power Pivot and Power BI, which are newer reporting technologies to the stack, and we're getting lots of inquiries from organizations asking for information and how those tools can provide benefits to them. So I'm going to deliver the first part of this presentation, the first three items on screen, and then my colleague Hamad will present the final three. And we both hope you enjoy the presentation and get some value from our commentary. So Chantal, I might show my screen. And we're going to start with a very quick coverage of views. Microsoft recognized or described views as a report, an on-screen report if you like. And right now I'm logged into a cloud-based Project Server environment, PPM. This is the 2013 version. And I really am not planning to spend much time talking about the content of what we're seeing here, but more so just the types of information that we can get out in a report. So I've gone into the Project Center, as you can see, and what I have here is a series of projects and traffic lights. We have metadata, dates, costs, and then over on the right-hand side, we have a Gantt chart representation of these projects against time. This is known as a view, a project center view, and the beauty of a view is it's highly configurable and the development costs are very, very low. So a Project Server administrator, a business administrator, can easily create a view and expose that to the users of the system. And thereafter, the user can interface with this view and filter and group and use the ribbon functionalities up here to modify what is displayed. However, essentially, it is still a view, and that means that it's ideal for viewing online, but what if you want to mark it up or take a copy away or spread some hard copies around on a boardroom table? You have the Export to Excel option in the ribbon, and it works quite well, so I'm going to click into that now. The only thing is that when you export to Excel, you lose all of the images, and you are replaced with just purely the data. And on a first cut, it might not look too pretty. It doesn't take too long to just do some very basic formatting, remove some columns that you don't need, and in time, with a little bit of effort, you can put together an extract of data that is representative of what you had on screen. But it is important to note that you don't get the traffic lights as they present, you don't get the Gantt chart as is visible there. A similar limitation exists if we were to look at resource availability. In the interest of time, I've just quickly gone to a graph that's already here. From the resource center, I have selected some resources, and then from the resource ribbon, applied the resource availability graph. Nice graph. It can be very useful to an organization to identify workload versus capacity issues over time. We have an export to Excel, but again, it doesn't export that image. What does get exported is the table below. So the first technology that we wanted to cover off in today's webinar was views, and perhaps describing views as a technology is a little bit exaggerated, but it is a way of presenting insights on your data, but they're mostly useful for viewing online, and they're really not what I would call print ready. Matt, have I missed anything there?
This is probably important to know that these views can be pushed by an administrator to all users, or a user can customize a view for him or herself and keep those settings with just by themselves.
Yeah, that's a good point. So they are highly configurable. Thank you. Aware of our time limitations, I'm going to move quickly into now our second topic, and it certainly is a technology now in the context of what we call SSRS reports, SQL Server Reporting Services. So here within our demonstration environment, we've got some reports bundled into various categories, and I'm going to go into the program and portfolio category and click into a project portfolio status report. Now, those of you who are not familiar with the SSRS reporting technology may not have seen this screen before, but frequently we use parameters, which are these values over here on the right-hand side, to filter the data that is going to be returned. And in many cases, they're what we call cascading parameters. So a certain value selected at the top level will then pre-filter the subsequent values. So in my case, the parameter that's not set here is the project status, and I'm going to say I only want to report on live projects, and I apply that parameter and the subsequent parameters update, and I also get to a choice here of risks and issues. What status do I want to report on? Is it only active or postponed and closed? I'm going to select all of those and hit apply and generate this report. Now you will realize or note that an SSRS report generally takes a few seconds to load, and that can be for a couple of reasons. One of the great advantages of SSRS is its ability to query multiple data sources, and this is a theme that we'll be coming back to throughout today's session. It can query our reporting database, our content database, potentially directly query a financial tool as well. And so because of the ability to query all of these data sources, it gives us high flexibility, but it may take a couple of seconds as it did there to come up. So here we have a report that's querying our projects and grouping them by their program. We can see we've got some information about the projects and general comments, risk and issue profiles. This is a couple of page report, so as I scroll into the second page, we can see some other projects which are reporting risks and issues and triggering red and so on traffic lights. SSRS reports are very much print ready. They are actually generally or frequently designed to be exported out to generally a PDF. You can export them to Excel or to Word. They don't always export graciously to those formats, in that some reports like this one, which is very column and row based, will export nicely to Excel, whereas others where we have merged cells and different headings and footers won't export quite so nicely. Just to give us an example of a secondary SSRS report, I'm going to go into a project category and produce a project status report. Again, here I need to select a parameter. In this case, I'm going to select the project name and generate a project status report. Many organizations actually have a drill down from the previous report that I had on screen. I should have done that while I had it there. Clicking into the project's name to generate from a portfolio status report into a project status report. And so here we have now, we're just examining an individual project. We have some traffic lights, risks and issues, some commentary, some information from the schedule itself. This is a couple of page report, and when I move to subsequent pages, this report is querying the project site. It's bringing back information on risks and issues and change requests and the like. So this technology which we're looking at this point is, as I said, SSRS, SQL Server Reporting Services. It's highly flexible. It's a professional look and feel. I would describe it as being print ready, in that the report writer will ensure that it's going to fit on a paper size that it's been designed for. As we saw before, it's ready to export to PDF. And you do have the ability to filter through the use of parameters at the time of generating the report. However, so that's a whole lot of positives and great functions that SSRS provides. However, what we can't do here is make many modifications easily. So for example, a user, let's say they just wanted to remove a column or add an extra column, anything like that would actually require a report writer to go into the tool itself and update the design of the report. So there's no modification to the output through an average user's interaction with the tool, which was a little bit different to say the views, which were very flexible and a user could filter them and group them and so on.
I would like to add here then that while these reports are browser friendly from multiple, so you can use the same report in Chrome or Firefox, SSRS is not exactly mobile device friendly. So there's a good likelihood that a report will not look good if you view the report from your iPad or any other mobile device.
Great point. Thanks, Matt.
And Dan, I've just had another question, or a question come through. Some of our attendees are asking whether the SSRS reporting technology is available to organizations that use Project Online.
Yeah, look, that's a really good question, and it's a matter that probably is not well understood at the moment. Hamad, you've done some work with Project Online and these sorts of reports. Maybe you're better placed to respond just briefly.
Yeah, sure. So SSRS is a market-dominant tool to create print-friendly reports, but unfortunately, this is not a cloud-ready solution. So you do get SharePoint and Project Online as a cloud offering, but SSRS has to be either installed on premises, or you could host your self-hosted virtual machine and install SSRS over there yourself, or you could use a third-party SSRS hosting solution such as EPM On Demand or Project Host or Fluent Pro, etc. Once your SSRS gets hosted, Microsoft does offer a way to access your Project Online data via OData connector. So you could access your Project Online data from SSRS reports, but the SSRS itself has to be hosted on premises or on the third-party cloud.
Thanks, Matt. So that's a good point. So just in summary there, SSRS reports are available to Project Online, but you do need some additional components for that to work. And if you need more information on that, perhaps after this webinar, we can come back to you with that. So that completes the second item for me. The third item that I'd like to now look at is the Excel services reporting technology. And a lot of attendees will be keen to know that Excel services reports do actually come out of the box. So when you install Project Server, the reports that I'm about to show you are there. The previous reports, the SSRS reports, obviously were developed by, in this case, EPM partners, but these reports do come out of the box. So let's look at a couple of simple ones. As its name suggests, a simple projects list. I've clicked into that. It's an Excel services report, and it's returning essentially that list of projects that we saw in the Project Center now in a report. When I click into the data, it uses the Excel pivot table format that we're familiar with, and it is possible for me to add additional fields just by ticking these check boxes in the standard pivot table format. So again, we're now looking at a different technology which has some nice functions. We're in Excel, which is a tool that most users like to report in. We have some flexibility. We have the ability to filter, group, add extra columns, on the proviso that those columns are part of the underlying query. So a user can't go and add an extra column here, let's say business unit. If it's not already in the query, then a user can't just go and add business unit to the report. This report will display in a browser as it is now, so it's what's called the Excel web app. We're in a browser, but we're looking at essentially an Excel output in this format. Let's take a look at a couple of more interesting reports. So milestones due this month. This is also an out-of-the-box Excel services report. And quite nicely, it filters tasks that have a finish date for the current month. And using that familiar Excel interface, we can see that there is a date filter automatically set on the task finish date for this month. Again, over on the right, we have many more fields in this case as part of the query. And so a user can scroll down that list and find some extra values. So maybe project owner would be something we'd like to see. Maybe we want to see when this project was last saved. Maybe we'd like to see the % complete. And as we are aware, the Excel pivot table functions add those columns. However, we still do have this in the browser. So what if we actually want to interact with this data at a more sort of personal analytical level? What I would tend to do in this sort of scenario is go into File and download a snapshot, which will then give me that data exported out to Excel. And from this point, because I actually downloaded it as a snapshot, as its name suggests, it's a one-off. It's not going to refresh. So I now have data which I can interact with and filter and group and build my own reports. Of course, however, the format is Excel, so it's great for analytics. It's not so great for printing and sharing at the boardroom with the steering committee. I might just show one other Excel services report, which helps to also for attendees to understand how this actually works. We often get a requirement to report on risks and issues across a portfolio. And you'll note that there is a risk and issue Excel services report that is deployed out of the box. So if I click into that report, on the first tab, I get to see the issues. And on the second tab, I get to see the risks, not graciously formatted here, but that could be tidied up in Excel. However, we can see risks and issues across multiple projects here. You can see the names of the projects on those two rows. So you might think, well, that's close to what I want, and with some modifications that would be perfect. And it's about this point that we need to understand a limitation of the Excel services reporting technology. Essentially, Excel services can only query a single data source. Now, Microsoft, when they designed Project Server, set up the project site template to have a risk and issue list and have standard fields within that list. And so there are some smarts in the background that copy the values of those fields into what's called the reporting database. And so in this case, we can actually report on risks and issues across multiple projects using Excel services because the technology is querying a single data source. However, if we get to the point where, which almost certainly we do, organizations have custom values in their risks and issue logs, those custom fields are not copied across into that reporting database. And so being able to report on organizational specific fields that are not there out of the box becomes more difficult. And then further to that, most or many organizations have additional data captured in project sites, for example, change requests. So let's say an organization would like to run a report on change requests as captured in project lists across a portfolio of projects. Can they do that using Excel services? Matt, are you able to respond to that question?
The only way to do this would be to create a connection to underlying database and aggregate the risk issues or any other custom list data using a data aggregation tool such as SQL integration services or PPM Partners Data Pump. And then once that data has been aggregated, you need a database analyst or someone who could write SQL queries. They can then create those connections for you. And once those connections have been created, those can be handed over to someone who is familiar with Excel pivot tables, and then they can generate the reports there.
Okay, thank you. So I guess in summary, it is possible, but there's a little bit more work needs to happen in the background to provide the output that we're looking for. Hamad, that's probably a good point to hand over to you, because I understand that as we start going into Power Pivot and Power BI, some of the exciting stuff there is addressing some of these limitations. So, Chantal, are we able to pass the screen over to Hamad now?
Yes, and while we're just passing over screens, let's just check in with you all, and we'd love to know what technologies you currently are using for your organisations. So while we're making Hamad presenter, we'd love to see which one you use. So if you can all just please put in your votes.
Can I only select one, Chantal?
They can only select one.
So perhaps the technology they use most?
Okay, yep, that's a great call, yep. Okay, so thank you everyone for voting. We'll just allow a couple more seconds while Hamad's screen comes up. Okay, thank you. All right. So I'll just share the results there for what most of you are using. So it looks like it's the SSRS SQL Server Reporting Services.
And it's a good lead for Hamad, because interestingly, Power BI and Power Pivot technologies that I don't think got a vote there, and that's probably representative of the fact that they're relatively new and that organizations are not aware of what they can do with those technologies. So Hamad, everyone is keenly awaiting your presentation.
Thank you very much, Dan. As much as I'm excited about these new technologies, I must say I'm a huge fan of Excel. So I'm a tad bit disappointed people are not using Excel as much as SSRS, but probably it's also understandable because SSRS presentation capabilities are far superior to Excel. You saw a brief demonstration of Excel services by Dan, and there was apparently some limitations by using Excel pivot tables and pivot charts alone. So you could use Excel charts for your visualizations, but these are not as slick and modern as they could be. And then using default Excel features, it is not possible to extract your data from multiple sources, for example, your projects and your SharePoint project site. So we need to utilize a different set of tools. There are two options available in that scenario from Microsoft. One is to use a suite of features in Microsoft Excel 2013, and it's 2013 only, not the previous versions. And these features are called Power Query, Power Pivot, Power View, Power Map. Anything that starts with Power, except PowerPoint, is now part of Excel 2013. If you have Excel 2013, this may be a good choice to start with because it gives you a familiar Excel interface, and we will shortly see a demonstration of that. This is an on-premises solution, so you need to have Excel installed on your computer. For those of you who does not have Excel installed or does not want to use Excel for any reason, there's an alternative solution called Power BI. This is very recent offering by Microsoft. In fact, it became generally available just mid of July. So it's been about 3 weeks since it has been available and has been out of preview mode. The functionality offered by Power BI has a significant overlap with Excel, Power Pivot, and Power View, but Power BI does a few bits a bit better than Excel. But another thing is that Power BI is exclusively cloud offering. So you have to have your reports published over the cloud, which could be a matter of concern for some of the organizations. But largely the functionality that I'm going to demonstrate is applicable to both set of technologies. I will start with Power Pivot and Power View first, and then we will see. Then we will have a look at Power BI, which in my opinion is even more exciting. So to work with Power Pivot and Power View, you need to have Excel installed on your computer. I'll show you a pre-built sample first, but then in my demonstration we will build a new report from scratch as well. So on your screen you are looking at a Excel pivot table. This is not built using Power Pivot or Power View. However, the data that has been retrieved is retrieved using Power Pivot. So Power Pivot has the capability to query more than one table or more than one system. So it could be Project Server and Oracle Financials, for example, and then combine this data to be consumed in Excel. In this example, I have a data which gives me resource name and their role in the organization. And then there's another set of data which gives me the consumption of resources. And then I could create a nice pivot table to show me resource availability versus capacity view. Then I have got Power View, which has even more appealing visualization. So this is a bar chart where I could see the red color as an availability of a particular role in my organization, and then the blue color represents assigned work. Now, creating this kind of report involves a significant bit of work, so it took me a couple of hours to build that. So what I'll do now is I'm going to demonstrate to you that how we can use Power Pivot and Power View to create some of the reports pretty quickly. And to do that, I'll start from a blank Excel spreadsheet. And my first step is to retrieve data. So the steps involved in creating a report would be to get the data, to create relationships in the data, and then build the visualizations. Project Online will be my source of data. And to get data from Project Online, you need to say that I will get data from OData feed. I cannot explain this in detail, but OData is in a standard format using which you can type a standard-based URL and retrieve data from your project server. For example, if in my browser, if I type the URL of my project online instance and then I say _API/project data/projects, this should give me all the data about all the projects in my project online instance. This is in XML format, not very easy to read by humans, but trust me, Excel understands it very well. You also need to learn a format of these URLs, but this is extremely easy and simple to understand. Now, I don't want to get all of this data because this will slow down my entire reporting creating process. So I will apply a filter and only get selected fields. So for each of the project, I am retrieving the project cost, project name, who's the project owner, the location of the project, budget, overall status, and work type. These are the only fields which I will use in my report. So this is the data I need in Excel. I will copy this URL and put it into my Excel. Excel is going and retrieving this data, and it says that there is a table called projects at this URL. Now, I will dump this data in form of a table, but you could see that I have other options, like I could create a pivot table chart or a Power View connection, and we will do that shortly. But first, let me show you a table view. So you can see all of the data has been retrieved in a nicely formatted table. Until this point, I haven't used Power Pivot or Power View. All I have done is that retrieve my data via OData. And let's jump into the exciting part where I will create a Power View-based report using this data. So I said that I want to create a Power View-based report. And Power View has already shown me that what kind of data is available to report on. And Power View has decided that it will show me the project name, owner name, location, etc. Probably I don't like all of this. I just want to see my project budget across all the projects. And then I want to distribute this budget based on location. So that's my project location and a project budget for each of this location. And then I'll change the order of these fields. As you could see, it's extremely simple, and anyone who's familiar with Excel can pretty quickly learn how to do that. Then I will change the format of my budget column to currency. That's better. And I want to convert this table to a bar chart. As simple as a couple of clicks. So this has been converted into a bar chart, and this shows me my project data, my project budget in millions based on various states. And then I want to see more details of this data, so I will put my bar chart on the top, and I'll create another element within this report, and I'll say I want to know the project name and the overall status of the project. Now, interestingly, these two components are connected in Power View. So if I want to see the details for New South Wales only, if I click New South Wales, you can notice that the project at the bottom have been filtered out. Similarly, if I click New South Wales and Victoria, I could see projects only for those states. Now, there's a lot more we could do in Power View. For example, we could create maps, pie charts, etc. But as I said, there's an overlap with Power BI, and we can do all this stuff in Power BI and a bit more. So I'll show you that stuff when we jump to Power BI. At this stage, I would also like to let you know that if I want to share this Excel-based Power View report with my colleagues, I would need to upload this Excel file to my SharePoint report library, which I have done already in this case. So if I go to my project online and go to my reports library, in fact, it isn't there, so I will just upload now. So I'll save my file on my computer on the desktop, and I'll call it Power View report. And then from my desktop, I could drag and drop this report into the browser. So to share Power Pivot or Power View-based reports, you have to have a SharePoint-based subscription in place. It could be your Office 365 or could be your on-premises SharePoint. And one last thing I want to tell you about these Excel reports, that the default mode of rendering when you are in browser and not using Excel, the default mode of rendering is Silverlight, which is very, very outdated technology. I don't prefer to use Silverlight. Silverlight is not mobile friendly, and it takes a long, long while to render, as you could see. So instead of waiting for this report to be rendered, we will jump to Power BI, which is sleeker, use more modern and open technologies, and do a bit more than what we have seen in this demonstration. So let me go back to the Power BI part, and we will create another report using Power BI technology. Power BI report accepts Excel as their source of data. So it is very much possible for me to do work in Excel first and then import that Excel data into my Power BI report. Or I could directly start from scratch in Power BI. To start a report in Power BI, I could go online and do all my work in a browser, or I could install a desktop tool called Power BI Desktop. It is interesting that this tool is free of charge for personal use. So if you want to create your organizational reports with some limitations, Microsoft is not going to charge you anything. I could show you some comparisons if required, where you could see what features are available with Power BI Pro, which is about $10 per user per month. But for a limited usage, this is free for all. So this is the Power BI desktop screen. And on the very first screen, I see the option of retrieving data. If I click that, it will allow me to retrieve data from various sources, which could be an Excel or CSV file, but also it could be a SQL reporting database, an OData feed, a SharePoint list from Active Directory, Exchange, Dynamics CRM, and Microsoft is adding more and more data sources here, which is very exciting. Now, for my project online data, I could retrieve this data from OData feed directly. But in my experiments in last few days, I noticed that if you have too many projects in Project Online, Power BI start giving you error. Since this is a new tool, it's still in infancy, so this tool has some stability issues. So the workaround to that, what I have done is I have retrieved my data in Excel using OData query, which we wrote earlier. So this is the table which we used earlier to retrieve the data, if you remember. And I will import this data into my Power BI system to create reports. Then to do this, I'll say I want to get data from Excel, and I'll provide this file as my source. So this Power BI is retrieving data for me. But I want to do more than my project data. Let's assume that we maintain the financial information of our system into an ERP tool, which is extremely common among the organizations I have worked with. And in this case, integration is not available with Project Server. The data is independently managed in a financial tool, but the financial tool has the capability to export a CSV or Excel file out of it. So I have created another Excel file. I have manually created it, handcrafted file, but just assume that this is an output of an ERP tool, and this ERP tool has information about project actual cost. It does not have any other project metadata, which is again pretty common. So I want to merge these two sources of information in my Power BI report. So I have already got my project data, and this time I will retrieve my financial data. So this time I said that I want to import financials. So both set of data have been imported, but before I start creating a report, I need to do some data transformation. So my first step would be to merge two data sets. So I'm saying that I want to merge my projects data with my financials data, and this could be done by saying I want to merge the queries. Now on this screen, I'm saying that in my project data, look into project name, and then in my financials data, look into similar project names, and wherever you find the same name, consider it to be part of the same data. At the bottom, Power BI is telling me that out of 38 projects, 26 have a matched financial information, which is acceptable. Maybe the other 12 projects hasn't started, so there is no financial record in the financial system. So in my original projects table, now I will have an additional column called actual cost, which is actually coming in from financial system. Another thing I want to do in this report is that I want to rename the location column to a different name. This is requirement of Bing Maps. I want to create a report based on maps, and Bing Maps does not like the word location, it likes the word states, but our project online call it location. So what I can do that in my data, I can transform this column and call it state. Also, I will define the data type of my project budget as numbers rather than the text field. So if I see the data type, I will call it a decimal number, and I'll do the same to actual cost. In fact, this is already a decimal number, so I don't need to do that. So this was the data transformation part, and now I will show you how we can create report out of this. So my data transformation is done, and for an enterprise Power BI suite, I can schedule this activity to be refreshed every hour or every day, so the latest data will be loaded every time that somebody runs the report or on a schedule. So in my report designer, I will start using this data. So I'll say I want to see my projects in form of a map. So first of all, I'll get my states, and by default, without me doing anything, Power BI has suggested me that this should be a location-based report, and it is showing me circles around various states of Australia, and if I move my mouse over there, it tells me that ACT, Canberra, is in Australian Capital Territory. Not very helpful unless I put some more data in. So I'll say that I want to see the count of projects in the map. This time you could see the size of bubbles have changed, and then if I move my mouse over, I could see I have 9 projects in New South Wales, another 9 in Victoria, 4 in ACT, and so on and so forth. Then if I want, I could put some further data into the same report. So I could say that I also want to categorize these reports based on the type of project. So you can see that these bubbles have now further pie charts built into that, but this makes this report very busy. So I won't do that. Rather, I would create another table at the bottom to get the same information. So this time I will say that I want to see my project name and what kind of project is this, and then I want to see the total cost of all the projects. So I'll create another element here called actual cost. It is suggested as a graph, but I rather want to see the textual representation. This is my actual cost coming in from a financial system for all the projects, and I'll do the same for budgets.
So Hamad, just to make sure that everyone sort of appreciates the significance of this, with Power BI we're querying multiple data sources and bringing it all together on the same screen. You've got the geospatial awareness up the top, you've got your table, and your costs all coming together, which is pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, I would say so. So this is my entire budget of all the projects, but then again I can filter it out. This time I'm getting my budget for New South Wales only. or I could further filter it out. So maybe this time I want to see projects for Canberra or projects for Victoria, or again the entire project report. I can do many more visualizations here. For example, I'll do just one more. Let's do a tree map. So I'll want to see my projects based on their overall status, and I want to do it as a tree map. And I want to see project status first. Then in the values, I want to see projects. So I could see that this is the status of my green, red, and amber projects. Now the colors are all wrong. We will fix this shortly. But before that, I will add another level of details, say by state. So I could see that most of the Victorian projects are green. Then there are some projects which does not have any value for their states or status. Now, point to notice is because of this being relatively the new tool, the options to customize colors, labels, charts are limited. Fortunately, in this case, we can change the colors. So I could say that amber would be something like this. Oh, I'm colorblind, so I'm not sure if that's amber. But let's say approximately looks like an amber. And red would be red. And what green is? Let's improve the green as well. Oh, so it is in the custom colors. Here we go. And we can see again our data is filtered for all the green projects in New South Wales, or this time all the green projects in Victoria. So I could really drill down into my data and see those details. Now I could do multiple charts, etc., but we are short of time. So what I'll show you next is that I could publish this data on the cloud, and that's the only way to share this report. So I'm saying that please publish this report on my Power BI account, which is my organizational account, and I'll call it a webinar of 13th August. So once this data has been published, I could log in online and see the same report. It's still publishing. However, meanwhile, I can log on to my Power BI account, and notice this time I'm using Chrome. This is very cloud-friendly technology. I could have logged on from my mobile device or my tablet, and my user experience would have been very similar to the one you're going to see on the desktop. So I'm logging into my Power BI. It says that your session has expired, so I just need to refresh it. Here we go. Now I have a report called Webinar 13 August available here, and you can see it's the same report. I could do a bit of designing, same designing which I was doing in the desktop here, but instead of doing that, I really like this tree map, so I want this to be part of a dashboard. Let's say I'm designing an organizational dashboard, so I could pin this particular aspect of my report to my dashboard. If I go back to my dashboard, earlier I pinned a map and a tree view and a tree map. So these two elements are pinned as part of my dashboard. Maybe this is something extremely important for executives and they want to see this as the first thing whenever they come over there. And then I can share this dashboard with any of my colleagues who is part of the same organization. I'm not going to go into details, but there are possibilities where you could restrict your data to be shared with others, or you could say that some of the data will be shared within the organization, other would be outside of it. So for example, if I want to share this data with Dan, all I need to do is to write his email over here, and Dan would be able to access the same dashboard that I have created. Also notice that to use Power BI, you do not need to have SharePoint account in place. You do not need to be a member of Office 365. This is an independent service. Now the last feature I want to show on this dashboard is this text box. It says ask a question about the data on this dashboard. I'm always very skeptic when it comes to artificial intelligence. I always think machines are too dumb. They can't do what we think in our mind. but let me give it a try. I'll say show project, and it gives me suggestions to say it could show me the project budget. So if I say show project budget, it tells me the project budget. Okay, a bit smart, but can it go any better? This time I said show me project budget by location. Apparently it can't do that because I don't have any field called location. But when I say show me the project budget by state, Power BI did it for me. Can I do anything else? Well, I tried during my experimentation. It was hit and miss, but some of the successful queries which I could do was show me project by cost, or show me number of projects by project owner name. And as you can see, most of the projects are owned by me. I'm a very responsible project manager in this case. Or I could say show me number of green projects. Well, greens are doing good, so why should we care about it? Let me say show me number of red projects, and show me that there are total 4 red projects. So there's a lot in Power BI, and there's a lot to be desired in Power BI as well. I would really like to see the designer part being improved and gives us ability for more customization, which is not there. But as is, I think it is already pretty exciting and useful for many organizations, especially for those who want to use the self-service BI features. At this point, I would like to...
Maybe can I just get a question in there, Matt, that I think probably a lot of people were wondering. So we see you consuming this BI report through the sort of app that you've logged into in the browser. Is it possible to include components that you've generated in Power BI in, let's assume that we have SharePoint and Project Server in web parts on a page. You know, organizations these days are all about dashboards. They want to be able to see multiple graphs in a single page. Is it possible to take these components and put them together on a dashboard in a SharePoint page or similar?
Absolutely. So the beauty of SharePoint is that you could utilize web parts. So we have web parts available to show a component from SSRS report, another from Excel report, a third one could be a Power View, and the fourth one could be a Power BI report. So we could create a mashup of reports on a dashboard.
Yeah.
And in fact, that could also include views, which you demonstrated earlier. Yeah. And all of those could be shown in a single page.
So I guess every single reporting technology that we've presented today, we could have a report of each of those presented on a single page of the dashboard, and then we'd sort of drill down capabilities.
Sure. Have you got any other questions, Chantal?
No, but if anybody out there has any questions for us, please pop them into the chat box there, or the question box. Should we launch to see the other poll to see what everybody's thought of our presentation and which technologies I'd like to use now? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sound good? Fantastic. So I'm just going to invite you to a poll. Okay, so having attended our webinar, which technologies would you be now interested in using? So I'll just wait for us to get a couple of votes through. And yeah, in the meantime, if any of you have any questions that you'd like to ask about any of the technologies that we've taken through today, we'd love to hear them. Okay, so we've got about 50% of you that have voted. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. I'm starting to see an overwhelming response for Power BI, Hemo, which is fantastic. You must have demonstrated it really well. So let's just close up that poll now and share this.
I would probably like to comment here.
Yeah, sure.
Power BI is exciting and is useful in many scenarios. I don't foresee it to be the only solution for your reporting needs. So SSRS, as 20.9% of them have selected, would still have lots of usefulness. So it will probably be a combination of SSRS, Excel, and Power BI, which would be useful for our customers.
Okay, interesting. All right, thank you. And I guess, Dan, would you like me to suggest the bonus offer that we have today for everybody?
Yes, please.
Okay, fantastic. So we just have one more thing would you like a free 2-hour reporting workshop specific to your organisation to get more from your PPM reporting suite? And Dan, can you just take us through, I guess, how you see it, what benefit you see for that for people?
The reason for putting this out there to our audience today is just recognising that in the time that we've taken, we've gone through some technologies fairly quickly. Not everyone would know, based on that, which technology is going to necessarily give them the output they want, although they probably have some ideas, and maybe they would like to discuss that with a consultant on a one-on-one basis, and let us get an understanding of exactly what you're trying to achieve, and let us give you some direction on how that can be done. So we'd be happy to do that as a sort of follow-on from this workshop and webinar that we've held today.
Okay, fantastic. Well, if any of you change your mind about that, in the follow-up email, we'll be sharing a recording of today's webinar, but we'll also include my email address. So if you are interested in it after today, if you ever think about it and want to learn more, please feel free to get in touch with us. We'd love to talk with you more about these technologies. So, Dan and Ahmad, do you have any final closing words before we say goodbye to everybody today?
No, all good for me. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And yes, thanks everyone again for being patient with us today. We realise that we've taken up a little bit more of your time than we anticipated, but we appreciate your patience, and we look forward to seeing you next time. So thanks again for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.